Welcome to this bonus edition of Strange New Pod. I'm your Fleet Admiral and host, Julian Brown, alongside Captain MC today for this very special episode as we welcome back to the show New York Times bestselling author David Mack. Welcome back. It's good to have you back again.
Hi, thanks. Good to be back.
Yeah, so the last time we spoke, it was to talk Star Trek Picard, Firewall, which was just this incredible 7 of 9 story that I still just rave about to anybody who's like, should I get Firewall?
Thank you.
Yes, you should get Firewall. But today,
I don't know if you heard, so Firewall, between then and now, won the Scribe Award for Best Original Novel Speculative.
I did not know that. That's awesome. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Yeah, won me another Scribe.
That's so cool. It's such a good, incredible book.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love 7 of 9, love Firewall, love just the story. Friend or Strangers, everything. If you haven't read Firewall, please go pick it up. It's fantastic. We are not here to talk about Firewall today, even though I could probably do another show on it.
There's so much. It's so rich.
It is. It is a really rich book. It really is. Today, though, you've taken us back to the 23rd century and the crew of Pike's Enterprise with your latest Trek novel, Strange New Worlds. There it is. You got it. I've got it. Ring of Fire. There it is. Also, I just found out about this right before we started, so I will let everybody know. David is going to be at New York Comic Con on Saturday. This is releasing on Friday. So New York Comic Con Saturday at the Simon & Schuster booth. You can go get a copy and get it signed by David himself. So
they're going to have copies for sale at the Simon & Schuster booth, which, let me double check that number, is booth 3409. That's 3409. It's going to be like, if they're true to form, it's going to be like a big pavilion. They're going to take up like a whole block, if I know them. And I'll be there on Saturday, October 11th, from 5 p.m. to 5:45 p.m., signing copies of Strange New Worlds. And if you've got copies of some of my other books and you want to drag them into the con and bring them up to me, I'll be happy to sign them while I'm there signing. So that's pretty much my only appearance at the con. I'm not doing any panels or anything. So if you want to find me, that's the where and when.
You keep saying con a lot. That's another project you're working on. We'll talk about that at the end of the show real quick. I want to get right into this. How's it been going? Because, we mentioned Firewall just now. How's it been going from TNG into Strange New Worlds and this crew?
Well, I've been doing this now for 30 years, switching gears between centuries, between eras, characters, ships. At this point, it's second nature. So I really just had to reset my thinking to Strange New Worlds. It helps that I've been watching the show all along, that I love the show, I enjoy the characters. And to get back in that headspace, I listened to music from the original series. Even though they don't use TOS music, it at least puts me in the right era of Star Trek. And so I would listen to that and I would rewatch episodes. And I got all the season 3 scripts well in advance so that I could sort of mine them for details and ideas and also figure out where to set my book, where and when. So, yeah, I've just gotten used to jumping between eras of Trek. It's pretty much what I do at this point.
Nice.
So it's funny you mentioned getting the scripts, because that was actually one of our first questions. Julian and I spoke to James Swallow when Toward the Night came out, and he was talking about how he had gotten the scripts, and that's what he was writing off of. So we were going to ask you if that's how you did it, which it sounds like it was, and how did you exactly find doing that process? Is it harder to do that than it is for working on something where you have more episodes to work off of?
Well, more episodes just means more dangling story threads, more things to explore. Contrary to popular thinking, the expansion of canon does not use up story possibility. It only makes the universe larger and expands potential story ideas. So I never really worry about that. The real challenge with something like Strange New Worlds, because the show is still on and is still in production, is that I have to try to find gaps in their continuity, temporal gaps that are long enough where you could plausibly sneak in another novel length adventure. Like, where can you fit another story into season 3? Because many of the episodes, directly set up one another, or they mention specific lengths of time. And so there's like, or during the length of time that that is the gap, they say, and the ship has been in space dock this whole time. It's like, well, there goes that whole block of time for adventures. At least any that use the ship. So it's really tricky. You've got to sort of go through with a fine-tooth comb and look at all the little dialogue clues and try to figure out, is there any time left in this season where I could sneak in a book? And eventually I found it between episodes 6 and 7, or maybe between 6 and 8, if you think maybe 7 was filmed in pieces by Beto at an earlier time, and then this is just the finished product. It's not really clear because their use of star dates on Strange New Worlds is just as erratic as it was on the original series. So it's impossible to tell from star dates where anything is in continuity. It's mind-boggling. But eventually, based on just cues in dialogue and the continuity of events, I was able to piece together that after episode 6, the Salat Who Ate Its Tail, and episode 7, What is Starfleet, and to a lesser extent, episode 8, 4.5 Vulcans, somewhere in there between 6 and then those latter 2 episodes, there had to be some kind of a gap, because apparently Enterprise had to go back for repairs. Farragut was still in space dock being repaired at some point. There was tons of work that had to be done on these ships. So I'm like, okay, so let's assume the ship has been repaired. They've done a quick shakedown, and now they're right back out on the job. And I'm going to sneak in this little adventure before whatever happens, before Beto comes aboard to film What is Starfleet. So in that respect, the scripts were very helpful. Without them, I could never have figured this out in advance. I would have just thrown the story at the wall and hoped that it stuck. Instead, because I had the scripts, I could find this little nook of time in the season and say, I'm going to plant the book right there. And then I was able to go through the scripts for episode 6. So actually, I was able to go through all of them and find little details that I was able to use to build the character storylines, particularly those involving Spock, Chapel, and La'an, and also to an equally important degree for Pike, because in the episode What is Starfleet, they had all these talking head interviews that Beto was supposedly doing with the characters. And there was a lot more to those interviews that was written than was actually in the finished episode. They wrote a lot, they shot a lot, and then they edited down and just took like the choicest bits in the final cut. But the script had tons of material that was written, ostensibly filmed, but not used. But therefore, it's still ripe for me to work with. So, for instance, in the book, the whole thing, the storyline from his youth about the horse, that's actually mentioned. He mentions that on screen in episode 7. There are little bits about Spock and La'an's relationship issues, the feeling of awkwardness, the difficulty they're both having in defining the terms of their relationship, even down to what are they to each other. That comes up in episodes 7 and 8. And then, part of what Spock's solution to it is in the book is a little sort of an Easter egg joke tucked in at the end, which is a reference to the end of episode 8, where La'an is having a talk in the port galley with Una, who's saying, what's going on with you and Spock? Why is it weird? And when she explains to Una why it's weird, I took that little detail and seeded it into the end of my book.
Socks.
The sock. This is Spock trying to make a romantic gesture and screwing it up.
I want to talk about they're not villains. I keep thinking of them as villains, but they're not villains. The crew of the station of
Zathara Station.
Yes, thank you, Zathara Station. And it seems like you made this choice here to make Velkaya especially and her crew feel like very unlikable characters for the crew of the Enterprise to have to work with to solve, you know, this mystery. It's like kind of like an absolute foil getting in their way, like time after time after time, and there's always another layer, you know, to unfold. Was there any thought to making them more balanced, or did you always intend for them to kind of be this like
Believe me,
adversarial towards?
this is the toned down version.
Oh,
They
I
originally
love that.
started out been more annoying than this. They were exceptionally annoying, and as a result, in my earlier drafts, La'an was even more angry with them. I mean, La'an, you know, even here, she's kind of curt with them. She's a little bit, you know, short at times. In some of my earlier drafts, she was just downright vicious, especially with Mitkov. And I was getting notes from Kirsten Beyer going, too much, reel it back in, try again, reel it in. So, and then I got notes, you know, from my line editor, Scott Pearson, who took over the book after its acquiring editor, Margaret Clark, passed away earlier this year. And he said the same thing, reel it in, pull it back, Dave, pull it back, too far. So that happened with a lot of elements in the book. But the whole point with the station crew and even some of the other antagonists who are seated within that crew, yes, they are meant to be, you know, thorns in our side. They're not necessarily enemies, but they are self-interested persons. It's proof that in the future, even with an improved and more enlightened humanity, people can still just be jerks, and some people just aren't going to get along, and some folks just aren't going to like each other. And sometimes, you know, nepotism will still rear its ugly head, and somebody's cousin will get the job of director of security on a station because it's supposed to be a do-nothing, you know, easy, no paperwork job. And then suddenly something happens, and you realize, oh, right, that's why we don't hire incompetent people. So, hence the whole tension between La'an and Mitkov.
Right.
So, yeah, but I mean, they're supposed to be our foils, partly for dramatic purposes, but also for comedic purposes. You know, there's supposed to be at least a little bit of humor in the fact that these scientists who are so great at the high-tech science part of their jobs or whatever are so bad at everything else. They're so bad at dealing with people. They can't manage their own security, logistics, communications, politics. They suck at all of it. And then you find out as you go along, as you said, as you peel away the layers of the onion, that particularly in Valkaya's case, there's a reason why. You know, that there is a motivation that underlies these seeming layers of both incompetence and obstruction.
Yeah. One thing I just want to say right off the bat is I would love to see the more angry or pissed off La'an notes. Like I want to read those.
Oh God, they made me take out some of my favorite one-liners.
Oh.
Things like "You're not much good to me alive, are you?"
Oh my God.
What do you do besides convert oxygen into carbon dioxide? And, you know, I had to take out all my favorite La'an one-liners just because, as they pointed out to me, they said, go rewatch some of the episodes. They said, we understand what you're trying to do with La'an, but watch how La'an actually interacts. Rewatch, especially they said season 2 and 3. So I went back and I rewatched and I was like, ah, crap, they're right. Even when she gets angry, she's cold and curt and professional. She's not one to come out with, you know, blazing one-liners or scathing remarks. She's just gonna walk around you and go do the thing herself if she has to, but she's not really going to say anything. But when she does say stuff, it's very sort of oblique. You're not going to realize you've been zinged until about 10 minutes later and you go, wait a minute.
Right. It's that
What did she say?
That cold sarcasm that she has a little bit too. Yeah.
Right. There's that little thing. I think, you know, there's a touch of that. It did manage to stay in the book near the end when they're trying to chase down the escaped prisoner. And I think it's Mick was just something like, you know, well, I'm not, you know, I've had experience with people, you know, shooting at me before. And she's like, I'm sure you got a lot of experience with that. And he's like, oh, you're funny. And La'an says, you know, completely serious, I am. A lot of people don't get that.
Yeah.
It's like, no, that's vintage La'an. I am funny, and I don't know why people don't get it.
By the way, before we continue, for our listeners, we are gonna, because
Spoilers.
because the book just came out, we're gonna try and avoid heavy spoilers, but there might be a few little minor spoilers in there, so be aware. MC.
Yeah, you'll note that I didn't say too much
No,
about
not at all.
No,
Not
you
at
were
all.
fine.
Joke.
Not at all. Yeah.
So I am such a nerd when it comes to writing and publishing. So I am really interested in the process of everything. And I know that the process of writing a tie-in novel is particularly crunchy and complicated. So I was hoping you could speak to going from the beginning of the process, like who approaches who on everything, how do you negotiate what's going to happen with the plot, and I obviously it's different than writing a piece of original fiction, but do you have a preference for one over the other?
Each one has its own particular challenges. Each has its pluses, its minuses. Uh, in the particular case of this book, and not all Star Trek books go through the exact same birthing process. Sometimes the idea originates with the author, and the author saying, "Hey, I got an idea for a book. Can I pitch it to you guys if you've got room in the schedule?" Sometimes the acquiring editor will approach an author and say, "I need a book for this series, and I need it by X date. Are you available or are you booked?" And they'll go down the line till they find someone who is available, who wants the gig, and yada yada yada. So in this case, I had wanted to get involved with Star Trek Strange New Worlds right from the very beginning. I made that very clear to the acquiring editor and the executive editor over at Simon and Schuster. They knew I wanted in, but they gave, I think the first book went to John Jackson Miller.
Yeah, the High
Second
Country,
book,
I believe. Yeah.
Second book went to Una. And then I think the third book went to James Swallow.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm coming in with the fourth one. So it took a little bit of time to wear them down and actually get them to go, "Okay, shut up. We'll give you a strange book. Shut up." So I had to sort of needle them for that. And basically, I just kept saying, "Put me in, coach." So they said, "Okay, we need a Strange New Worlds book, preferably set in season 3. Here are the scripts. Get us a pitch. Pitch us some story ideas for a book in about a week or two. Tell us what you got." And I went away. Unfortunately, I already had an idea percolating in my head. And then it was just a matter of translating that big idea into a Strange New World story that was tailored to that setting, to those characters, to their backstories. And the idea that I was starting with, that I had in mind, was based on a real life event, a CIA operation called Project Azorian. A lot of folks don't know about Project Azorian. It happened in the 70s. And it was essentially about the CIA wanting to recover a sunken Russian nuclear submarine from the bottom of the Pacific. It sunk in deep water, and nobody was quite sure where, but the CIA did know where. They had found it, but they had no idea how to raise the damn thing off the seafloor. So they teamed up with, of all people, Howard Hughes, the reclusive billionaire. And they built this massive seagoing platform called the Glomar Explorer, which a lot of people heard of in the 70s. It became famous because supposedly its purpose was to mine precious minerals and look for oil in deep sea regions that other rigs couldn't get to. This was its stated purpose. Its actual purpose, it was designed to raise the sunken submarine K-129. That was what it was built for. And it was crewed by all civilians with a number of CIA personnel embedded within, because the military couldn't be anywhere near it. It had to look like a commercial operation. It had to look like something that the eccentric billionaire Hughes would fund, because it was another one of his crazy ideas about how to get rich off something in the ocean. And everyone would just go, "Oh, that's just Howard being Howard." No, that's Howard being a front for the CIA. So I took this fascinating story about having to disguise an important classified operation as a civilian operation, in real life, a commercial one; in Strange New Worlds, a scientific one, but actually having it have another far more intriguing purpose that is disguised at first. And I had to think in terms of how do you translate this incredibly dangerous deep sea environment? What's an equivalent, something equally dangerous but for starships? And that was how I arrived at the accretion disk around a black hole, and the point where that accretion disk, this ring of fire,
There it is.
intersects with a stream of superheated stellar plasma that is being siphoned off of the red giant companion star to the black hole. So at where this river of fire is coming in and meeting the ring of fire, at that intersection point is where this space station sits, which has got to be one of the most dangerous places to put anything ever. Hence all the fun we have in the later sections of the book.
That's actually, yeah, that's what I want to take this, because Ring of Fire very much feels like a murder mystery game or a show that you go see with your friends.
It's partly you've done it, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Strange
But it's
Worlds,
also a why done it.
oh, 100% is a why done it as well. We got that kind of murder mystery already of Strange Worlds in season 3 with Space Adventure Hour, which was hilarious and epic. This is obviously a lot darker than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I try to keep some of the lighter tone of Strange Worlds and banter.
100%.
But yeah, it is a far more serious set of circumstances.
Yeah, well, that'll happen when you just mentioned having a volatile black hole ready to kill everyone on board Cathara Station, mixed into all this. Did you want to play deeply into those murder mystery tones, or did you want to go murder mystery, why done it as well, and also, like you just said, CIA kind of spy thriller as well?
It was more along the thriller genre is what I was going for. I'm not generally a mystery writer, so I'm not interested in sort of creating the follow the trail of breadcrumbs. That's not an approach I was interested in. I have some friends who are very good at that. I am not one of them. I tend to focus more on the thriller aspect, with the detective work being secondary to the consequences. I have most of like the hard detective work, the forensic work happens off screen or in the liminal spaces of the story that we don't actually have to spend a lot of words on. What I focus on is at each stage, when we've made each new discovery that moves us forward in the investigation, what is the consequence of that? What action do we take in reaction to that new information? And what is the counter reaction to our action? What do we cause by trying to act on this new info? And so at each stage where we think we're going to move toward resolution, we actually wind up complicating the situation even more. We create yet another disaster. We create yet another confrontation. Somebody else gets shot. It's just every time we think we're fixing it, we're not fixing it. Every time we think we've figured it out, we've actually just obscured something else. And so I was playing more in terms of the thriller. Because, for instance, when I design a story like this, I often have the big picture ideas. I try to think about the theme, the character arcs, but I'm also, a lot of times, I am thinking about action set pieces. I'm like, if we were to film this, where's all the money going to go in the budget? Like, what's going to be the action set piece that when you see it in the trailer, you're like, oh, I got to see
yeah.
I'm seeing that movie.
And there's a bunch of those in the book that are huge.
Right. Like, the actions, without giving away the exact details, the spoiler, like the chase through the cargo bay as the station is undergoing crisis. That's a fun sequence. You can just imagine the chaos of that. Or Enterprise trying to hang on to this station as it's threatening to fall into the accretion disk. That's like a hummingbird with a piece of string, trying to hold a semi-tractor trailer truck from going into a river. And then, of course, Enterprise getting taken for a ride and gets pulled into the stellar plasma and gets its ass whooped. So basically, yeah, I designed these action set pieces, and that was a lot of what I had in mind. And most of those, like the action set pieces, sometimes come to me first. I designed some of those while listening to music. In this case, these were designed while listening to the music from Mission Impossible 7 Dead Reckoning.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, there's a couple of tracks in particular called Murder and the Orient Express and Countdown. And those are the ones that fit in with the set pieces near the end of the book. The flashback for Pike, again, not spoiling this for the readers, but there's a flashback near the beginning of the book where Pike is relating a story to Una from his youth as a younger officer. Something that happened to him while he was essentially second officer aboard a ship called Chatelet or Chatelet. I'm not even sure of the pronunciation. It might be Chatelet. In any event, he's telling her this story. That whole sequence was conceived beat for beat while listening to the first 4 tracks on the Mission Impossible 7 soundtrack. So if you read that chapter and you happen to have access to that soundtrack and you want to feel like what it's going to be like to watch that in a movie theater, put those tracks on and you will understand exactly what that sequence feels like. The pacing of it, the tempo, the mood, you'll have it all right there.
Did
Giacchino
do
the
the
Spotify playlist?
Nice. Did Giacchino do the scores for those again?
No, that was Lauren Bell.
But that's right. Yep. The music for like all those last few Mission Impossibles were all really good.
Lauren Balfe did several of them. I think he did Fall. Actually, he did 2 in a row. He did Fallout, which was 6, and then he did Dead Reckoning, which was 7.
Yeah.
The one before that, Rogue Nation, I believe, was was it Joe? Somebody. Damn, I used to know his name.
I think it's Zimmer did the final one, right?
I think I'm wrong on
that too.
Let's see. Rogue Nation was by Joe Kramer. Fallout, was Balfe. Reckoning was Balfe. Zimmer
did too.
Recall who did the new one.
Yeah.
I don't recall who did Final Reckoning. But well, there you go.
Well, that's another podcast.
I
would talk about those movies too. I know that our host of Alternative Space, Amy Imhoff, loves the Mission Impossible movies as well.
Yeah, I know Amy.
Yeah, Amy's awesome.
So it's funny you talking about really focusing on the action set pieces, because when it comes to my writing, it's always I find like the most difficult part is finding all of the sections in between the parts that I have absolutely perfectly in my head.
Yeah.
I think that is a very common thing for a lot of writers. And for me, it tends to be action set pieces and then personal moments between people. I'm great at a conversation, and there's a lot of personal stuff in this book. Part of that, I think, probably comes from when you said it in the season, because it's episode 6 and 7. So there's a lot of drama going on, but you've got Pike missing Patel. And probably what's most directly influencing the plot is the love triangle looking thing between Spock, Chapel, and La'an. So how do you balance that with the adventure? Like, because obviously you want to have it there, but you don't want to go too heavy on it.
Well, one of the tricks with something like this is finding, again, as you say, the personal story, and then finding a way to make certain that it dovetails with the action. The action of the story, the set pieces, the big crises, they need to echo on a larger level what's happening on a micro personal level. The smaller stories need to be echoed in the massive story. So we have this story about, this thing going on with the station, and what is its true mission, and what is its connection to the past, et cetera, et cetera. And this echoes Pike's story. What is Pike's personal connection to this story, to its mission? How does that tie into his youth? How does that tie into the arc of his life, the decisions he's made, the person he's become, the person he wants to become? How does the personal issues that underscore, let's say, Una, how does that affect the way she relates to Valkaya? What do they have in common, and how does that create an arc that they can share? Starting out in conflict and then coming to understanding. How does the action, let's say, that goes through, the middle of the book as we're aboard the station and trying to do our thing, and we put La'an and Spock and Chapel individually and together into peril a number of times. How does the action that transpires and the things they do in reaction to peril, what does it reveal about their relationships, their friendship, the dynamic between the three of them? What does it say about, the level of tension, the level of awkwardness, but also the still very important degree of mutual affection and mutual respect that all three of them have? These are not high schoolers. This is not 90210. This isn't going to be like your classic, jealous lovers love triangle. I mean, they shot that down right at the beginning of season 3, when they have a moment when Chapel needs to ask Lon something about Spock, and Lon is like, "Oh no, tell me you're not that," and then Chapel's like, "No, no, 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 no." And it's like, so they deflect that, like they pop that balloon very early in the season. That's not who these people are, but there is still awkwardness, and it comes through as subtext. Like, I was asked again, this was a case where it was more overt in the earlier drafts, and based on editorial feedback and feedback I got from Kirsten Beyer on behalf of the show, I was told, bury it, make it subtext, let it drive the actions, imply things in the dialogue, but hold it back, put it in the subtext, put it into, the symbolism of what's going on and not in what's actually being said. So you've got Spock. Spock's issue is, am I, pursuing the wrong kind of relationship with the wrong person? What am I to La'an? And, should we be more? Should we not be more? Why did I pursue someone who is so undemonstrative after somebody like Chapel? Chapel's issue is, I am in love with Roger, and I'm sorry that I had to hurt Spock in the process of breaking that news. Now I'm worried that I've hurt my friendship with Spock, that Spock doesn't have the same level of platonic affection for me that we had before. I feel like our dynamic has been hurt and that I've lost my friend. And with La'an is a very guarded person. She's not good at relationships. She's not good at vulnerability. She's not good at opening up. And so she's got an issue where, on the one side, she knows Spock wants her to open up. She knows that Spock wants a greater degree of intimacy, a greater degree of connection, and she's not sure she's ready to give that. On the other hand, she knows that even though Spock and Chapel are kaput, they're done, she can tell that there is still an incredibly powerful connection between them. Even as a platonic connection, it is still incredibly powerful. And she has to wonder at times, he could be so detached, if I'm in peril, but if Chapel's in peril, he goes berserk. Does he care more about her than he does about me? Would he feel that way if I was in trouble? And so you take all these fears, all these insecurities, all these subtextual questions that are driving the characters, and from that you build moments like when the saboteur tries to kill the three of them while they're in the corridor, and the corridor is depressurized and they're at risk of being basically flushed out into space. And so Spock basically has one hand where he's holding onto a steel pipe, and he's got the other hand with which he's hanging on to Chapel. And then Chapel is the one who, at a critical moment, after La'an is hit by a piece of debris and is about to be thrown out into space, it's Chapel who catches La'an and is hanging on to La'an. And the three of them basically save each other by working together in that moment to do what has to be done. And when they finally get it shut down and they look and Spock lets go of the pipe, you realize that because of his Vulcan strength, he basically crushed his handprint into a steel pipe. Gives you an idea of how strong this guy is. And then later on, there's a sequence where Chapel is put into very direct danger, and Spock has to take on some peril himself to get her out of it. And in the course of doing so, when he finally gets his hands on the source of the trouble, he kind of just unleashes on this individual with a degree of ferocity. But the thing is, even though his hands are unleashing ferocity, his face is blank.
Yeah.
No expression, just bam.
I got to say, I love that set piece of them basically when they minor spoilers. There's lots of bombs in this book.
Yeah.
There are lots of bombs. This set piece is just it's a great way to kind of like tackle that really awkward relationship that's happening right now. And what a better way to like kind of figure that out than almost being sucked into a black hole. It was really neat how you did that.
Yeah. And then, of course, at the end of it, after they've saved each other, one another, after the three of them have saved one another, and they're all just kind of lying there on the deck. And Chapel says something like, I think we need medical assistance. And Lon is like, isn't that your job?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Throw that in my face.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like these three have gotten back to the level where, oh yeah, we're friends and we can snap at each other.
Yeah.
I definitely think the time period dealing with all of this, who Spock is going to have take precedence in his life. It's really interesting having that come right after the Sellat who ate its tail, since that is kind of really the starting point of his relationship with Kirk, which will become the defining relationship of his entire life. However people decide to see that relationship. And I think like you kind of mentioned that a little bit in the book, because there is Spock and La'an talking about the interactions with Kirk. Between both of them, because Spock and Kirk obviously have a bond, but then La'an and Kirk had this huge thing back in season 2.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I have to admit, I did work that in. I wanted to make sure that was addressed. It's always sort of struck me as odd, though, the writer's choice in the writer's room at Strange New Worlds to have La'an as a direct descendant of Khan Noonien Singh and put her on the bridge of Enterprise at all. But having done that, the fact that over the course of the run of Strange New Worlds, she will have been maybe not romantically entangled with Kirk, but there was definitely an indication that there was some chemistry, that something was almost going to happen between the two of them. And then she winds up with Spock. And then a short time, like just a few years later, these two guys wake up and meet Khan Noonien Singh. I'm like, what are the odds of that? But putting that aside, I have to imagine what actually drove Khan over the edge and just finally drove him completely mad. And we probably never got to see this. It happened off screen, I'm sure. There probably was some moment where Spock and Kirk were taunting him, saying, Kirk says, I met your great-great-great-granddaughter, La'an. She's a freak. Yeah. Spock says, I must concur, Captain. I also dated La'an. She was a freak. And Khan is like,
fucking amazing.
You and I am God. He just loses his shit. That's what I think really happened. I think Khan lost his shit because they basically said, yeah, we banged your great-great-great-granddaughter, man. She was.
That's my headcanon now. Thanks, Dave. That's it. That's the only way I'm going to look at that for now on.
When is there to see it?
There's not. That's incredible.
I mean, how could they not have taunted him with that?
They had to have, right? Right?
How do you not throw that in his face?
Especially his superior intellect.
Yeah. You may have the superior intellect, but I've got the superior.
Oh my God. Yes. Everything about this. Yes. 100%. How do I even try to segue that into talking about Captain Pike? I don't know. I'm gonna try.
I don't know. I may have to talk myself out of writing any more Star Trek books for the rest of my life.
I don't know. I'd read that. Behind the scenes of Space Seed, what really happened. That's your next book. That's what's happening.
Yeah, Seed, where Seed takes on a whole new meaning.
Whole new meaning. Whole new meaning. We're gonna stay on characters. That's how I'm segueing this. We're gonna stay on the characters of Ring of Fire. Dating all the way back to Discovery season 2, Captain Pike has always been kind of classified as the Boy Scout. Maybe not the one who would taunt Khan with, banging on. No, he wouldn't. Always classified as a Boy Scout, kind of this do no wrong character. And we've learned over the course of a couple seasons now, he's made some mistakes. One of them we learn also, we don't know what the mistake is, but we hear about it in the Sellat who ate its tail. He says he made a big mistake under Captain April at that time. And then, of course, as you talk about in Ring of Fire, this incident aboard the Chatelet, and as a young boy with the horse as well. What went into that choice of filling in more of Pike's past with, I don't want to say, I wrote in this outline darker sides, but it's not darker sides. It's the more damned if you do, damned if you don't decisions of being a Starfleet officer.
Humanization.
Yeah, humanization. Yeah.
It was basically trying to find these moments of tragedy in his past. The moments, I think for everybody it's different, but I think all of us, if we look back at our youth, our adolescence, early adulthood, we're all going to find moments we're not proud of. And sometimes when you look at those moments and you consider them with the benefit of hindsight, sometimes you find patterns. The events may not have been exactly alike, but you say, it's interesting that what these two events have in common is this or that. And maybe there were similar motivations or similar circumstances. What Pike discovers between this incident when he was about 14, when he describes it in episode 7, tried to rope this horse, and the horse fell. Basically, he pulled it down, and the horse broke a rib. The rib punctured the lung, internal bleeding, et cetera, et cetera. The horse couldn't be saved. By the time help was able to arrive, he had to put the horse down. And this is the very simplified version of the story that he gives in episode 7. In fact, the reality is even more damning than that. It's that he overestimated his abilities, is what I postulated in the story. He went out because he had something to prove. He was trying to prove himself to his father. He was trying to prove himself to the father of this girl that he, could do this, that he was a good enough rider. He was a good rider, but being a good rider and being good enough to do that and rope and control another horse at the same time, that's a higher level of skill. He thought he had it, and he didn't. So he went out there, did something he wasn't really qualified to do, and he did that because he was trying to impress an authority figure. He wanted the respect of an authority figure, and he thought this was how he was going to get it, and it went tragically wrong. And this kid who had grown up, with a proper degree of reverence and respect for horses, kills a beautiful horse and is haunted by it. And especially by the fact that, as he has to put the horse down and he's looking into its eye, there's this strange acceptance. Like the horse doesn't even blame him. It's like, it's just this really surreal moment in his youth. And then, say, 10, 12, or some number of years later, as a young officer aboard this ship, standing a night watch, suddenly something happens. Normally night watch, nothing happens. Tonight, something happens. A ship that gives a transponder ID, the transponder ID doesn't match the ship. So now they investigate. They tell it, stand to and prepare to be boarded. And instead it runs. And now he's in pursuit mode. Ship goes to red alert. He's got everybody at combat stations. They're thinking this might be a spy. Maybe they've spotted a Romulan spy vessel and they need to intercept. And so they chase it down. They do what they have to. He's smart enough to figure out what its escape tactics are. He gets a tractor beam on this thing, tractor beam on the ship, just like he put a rope on a little horse that he didn't understand and didn't know how to control. He puts a tractor beam on a ship that he doesn't understand and doesn't know how to control. And why does he do this? Why does he not back down when it starts to fight and the ship starts showing signs of distress? Why doesn't he let it go? Because he wants the respect of his XO and his captain. He wants to impress authority figures. He wants approval. And so he doesn't let go, and the ship explodes and kills 37 people aboard. 37 people, he doesn't know who they are. They registered as vaguely Vulcanoid and humanoid and whatever, but he can't be sure. All he knows is he made a decision, it went wrong, and 37 people died. That's all he knows. And he is a soulful enough individual that this haunts him. All he can see of this situation, even though he's exonerated by Starfleet, they said you acted by the book, you followed regulations, you gave them every warning, you did what you were supposed to do, there's no wrongdoing here, you may return to duty. That exoneration by an Article 32 tribunal is one thing. Forgiving yourself for killing 37 people is another, and he can't do it. Just like he can't forgive himself for killing the horse, now he can't forgive himself for killing these 37 people. He feels so guilty about it that for years he doesn't even tell Una. who has followed him from posting to posting for years. She eventually joined him on Shadow. They served on Shadow together for a while. And even then, he didn't tell her what he did. And it was classified, so she didn't find out about it until he told her years later. And she can't believe it. She's like, "Why didn't you talk to me about this? Why did you keep this?" And he's like, "I was ashamed." And that's what haunts him. So you find these parallels, like you do these two things. What do these two things have in common? And you come down to, what was the reason you're trying to impress an authority figure? So then you recreate that situation. I recreate that near the end of the book when he has a choice. Why is he trying to do what he's doing? What is he doing? How is it similar to what he did before, but how is it different?
Mm-hmm.
Why is it different this time? And where does the redemption come from? It comes from doing the job right this time, doing it for the right reasons. And then when given the opportunity to do something to please the authority figure, challenging the authority figure and taking a stand against them. He basically, through two separate actions, atones for the past and is able to free himself of the guilt for what happened at the black hole during his youth as a younger officer. And although he can't undo or change the past about what happened to the horse, he at least now is able to forgive himself and is able to let that go. So he has found a measure of absolution that he otherwise wouldn't have had.
Yeah, two things I just want to follow up on. I really think that his whole arc in this, with his actions with the horse and on Chatelet, it adds a whole new layer. If you go back, I feel, and watch Salatu Ate Its Tail now, to that conversation that he has with Jim Kirk at the end of that episode.
Oh
like it really adds so much depth to that. And I have to say, and spoilers, pretty big spoiler, I don't know, it's just spoilers. It's a great moment where he basically gets to throw the literal book at the Admiral at the end, but basically saying, "Fuck off, like, I'm not gonna do this," because it's the right decision. Yeah. It's a really great redemption moment for him. Yeah.
What I also love is, the Admiral tries to end run him and says, "Ortegas,
yeah,
take command, relieve him and take control of Enterprise and stop that ship." And she just stands up and she goes, "No."
And
she waits a moment. She goes, "Sir." And then she sits back down. So this is, it was prior to this in the book, but there's a moment, like I guess a few chapters earlier, when Pike is watching Ortegas, who is filling in as XO, while Una and Spock and everybody are all off the ship. And he's watching her move around the bridge and do what she does. And he's like, she is going to be one hell of a captain. He's already thinking like a proud father, watching the young officers under his command develop and grow. He knows they're going to develop, and eventually they're going to leave. They're going to get promoted. They're going to move on to other commands, other duties. And he's already feeling that swell of pride, knowing she's going to be a captain. She's going to be good.
Yeah. MC, if you don't mind, I'm going to go right into my follow-up, because that was actually my next question. That's a perfect segue. Erica really gets to shine in Ring of Fire. Everybody always is talking about Mortegas. She gets her episode in Terrarium. If you haven't watched it yet, go watch it.
Well, I've seen the whole season. I love that episode.
Fantastic. Yeah, she gets to shine and be Pike's acting XO in this book. And as you mentioned, that one line of dialogue at that one point, she is going to be a hell of a captain one day. That was like, oh, yes, absolutely. How was writing that new first officer captain dynamic between these two, where they're not usually in that role, but they do? These are two characters that we've learned through Strange New Worlds share a lot in common. One of those things being test pilots.
Yeah, they're
both
great pilots. They speak the same language.
Yeah.
And so they have a rapport. Just as, it's different from the one that Pike has with Una. Theirs is the result of a long friendship. And one of the things I loved about Una McCormick's Strange New Worlds book, Asylum,
so good,
which is mostly set, back, prior to a lot of the events of Strange New Worlds. I mean, it's partly set during, I guess, season 1 or 2. They have a storyline about a diplomatic thing, but the real meat of the story is back during Una's academy days, when she first meets Pike, who is a young officer who's done something that's gotten him a bit of renown. He's a bit of a Starfleet celebrity, even though he's still young. And the two of them bond. And you can just feel, Una does such a great job of digging into their souls, figuring out what makes these two characters tick, finding out what makes these two characters resonate together as friends, why they bond, what it is that they find in each other that they hadn't found in other friends, and why they're so good together as friends. I love that book. Absolutely loved it, which I will mention Asylum was this year's Scribe Award winner
Ah,
for Best Novel.
we got to interview Una about that, and it's just an incredible novel.
It's a beautiful book.
It's really great.
Beautiful novel.
Yeah.
And so I had that in my head, that vision of those characters. And I was like, okay, so I understand the dynamic of Una and Pike because of this. Ortegas and Pike need to feel a little bit different. And whereas, you get we are friends, we are equals, we are peers with Pike and Una. Pike and Ortegas it's not even really Big Brother. He really is more like a proud father because of the age difference between them, the rank difference. He is in many respects, he's like proud father. He sees in Ortegas the daughter he could have had. And I think that on some level, he is the paterfamilias to the Enterprise crew in that era of Trek, especially in the way that he cooks for all of them, which is something that's called servant leadership. It's a philosophy of military command that's taught at Annapolis, it's taught at West Point, and Pike embodies it perfectly when he cooks for his senior crew, showing this level of regard, putting yourself in a servant role of cooking, of preparing food, serving your subordinates is a way of not only showing them respect, but of reinforcing that emotional connection that says, I'm not just here to give you orders. I am responsible for your lives. I care for you. I am responsible for you. And I take that seriously. Servant leadership is about understanding that being promoted is not about gaining power. It's about accepting responsibility. And that's what he shows when he cooks for his people. And you get a feeling, I think, because of that it creates this very familial bond between the people, especially at the top level on Enterprise. So I feel like Ortegas, on some level, looks up and sees almost a fatherly quality in Pike.
Well, I think this book also had another really intense mentorship relationship, which is quite different. And that's Scotty and Pelia, who are one of my favorite parts of season 3. So I loved that there was a plot with them in this. But I just want to know the thought process for how'd you come up with this plot?
Pelia has always been a bit of a kook. And I had to sort of, as I was fleshing out the book and making sure there was enough story material here to go the distance of 100,000 some odd words, I knew that it was going to need at least a few bits of C or D plot of humor. Like it needed moments of levity, something that was going to break up all the seriousness, give us a couple of moments of just pure lighthearted Strange New Worlds feeling, both at the beginning and in the middle of the book. And then again, this is one of those things where, again, it has to tie into the overall plot and serve the overall plot so that when we get to the end and Scotty, is motivated and comes through in the clutch and does things and finally is doing these things the way that Pelia is telling him she wants him, that she wants him to do it. This is the breakthrough. It's like, okay, finally he and Pelia are getting on the same page. And you see it like between episode 5, where Pelia is still driving him up a wall, 6, where he's trying to keep up with her as they are, laying copper wire and setting up hardline phones in Enterprise. And then they come back in 7 and 8, and suddenly the relationship changes. If you notice the dynamic of misunderstanding, competition, etc., antagonism that you saw in the early part of the season shifts around 7 or 8. And now suddenly these two are much more on the same page. And by the end of the season, they are in sync. These two are working well together. I'm like, okay, something shifted. Something happened. that shifted these two better into gear. At some point, Pelia figured out this is what it takes to motivate this kid. Yes, my kooky ways are great for me and they work for these other people, but it's not working with him. You can't have two kooks. You can't have two chaos Muppets. If you've got a chaos Muppet and you need to manage the chaos Muppet, you need to take on the role of order Muppet. We can't all be Bert or Ernie. You got to have a Bert and an Ernie. You can't have two Ernies. Two Ernies are chaos Muppets. You can't have two Berts, conflicting systems of order. You must have an order Muppet and a chaos Muppet. And she figures out he's a chaos Muppet, and I'm a chaos Muppet. If I want to stay a chaos Muppet, I need to make him into an order Muppet. I need to get him to go by the book. So she gets him to go by the book. She keeps the spirit of innovation that he brings to it, but she turns him into a by the book guy. She makes him into an order Muppet because that is what they need in order for their dynamic to work.
And it took Scoville units, capsaicin, and ginger ale, and that's just epic.
Ginger ale is just, that's one of those little touches where I hope that they don't do anything in season 4 or 5 to blow that out of the water. But I did cover my bases by using, every tie-in writer learns this lesson eventually. You learn to use weasel words like most, some, the majority of, or whatever. So most lanthanites are allergic to ginger. And so on. So, well, hopefully they won't show her enjoying a ginger ale at some point or eating ginger with sushi and blow me out of the water. But you never know. I knew the job was dangerous when I took it. What are you going to do?
Yep.
So I think that is just about all we've got. So thank you for coming, David. You've already told us that you're going to be at New York Comic Con this weekend. But for people who can't go to Comic Con, where can people find you? How can people find Ring of Fire? And do you have any other upcoming projects?
Let's see. Ring of Fire, you can find pretty much wherever new books are sold. It is currently available online and in brick and mortar stores. It is available in hardcover, ebook, and unabridged digital audiobook. As far as where to find me online, you can always find my website, davidmack.pro. That's David Mack, MACK.PRO. That's my official website. It has all of my lists of my published work. It has a press kit page with blurbs and bios and a bibliography that you can download and all that happy stuff. As far as new projects that are currently going on, now through the, I believe, Monday, November 3rd, there are going to be 4 more episodes of Star Trek Con, which is a full cast audio drama produced by Secret Hideout, CBS Studios, and Realm. It stars Naveen Andrews and Ren Schmidt. Naveen Andrews, you probably know from Lost. Ren Schmidt is one of the stars of the Apple series For All Mankind.
So good.
She plays Marla McGivers. He's playing Khan. The story for it was developed from an original concept by Nicholas Meyer with some additional material by Realm writer Mac Rogers. And then this version of the miniseries was scripted by myself and Kirsten Beyer. And so that's going to be run a total of 9 episodes. 5 of them are out. 4 are yet to come, with some of the biggest surprises yet to come. I'm hoping that Khan, which has gotten pretty good critical reviews and pretty good fan feedback so far, will continue to do so. I hope it'll rack up good numbers so that the powers that be will want to do more of these audio dramas, because I do have some ideas that I would love to pitch them, and I would really hope that Kirsten and I get a chance to work together again, because working with Kirsten on Khan, and this is something hopefully we can talk about in a separate interview with Kirsten, working with Kirsten on this project has just been fantastic. I had to level up my skills to keep up with her. Her mind moves at 1,000 miles an hour, so you gotta fight to keep up. But learning to keep up with her and keep pace and to work at her level, it was a hell of an experience. It was an education.
I love Con so far. I want them to do more audio dramas. As a big Doctor Who fan, I love the robust Big Finish radio dramas that they do, and I think Star Trek is ripe for it. So I would love to see more.
I also
of
want
those
them to
come
hire
out.
me and Kirsten to make a new TV show, but
Well, yeah.
Hey, that would be fantastic. Yeah, we are all
pipe dreams.
Yeah, right. We're loving Con, like MC just said. Giraffe has been hosting our live show, reviewing it on Thursdays. If you're listening to this, you should actually have a new episode reviewing episode 5 right now, available on YouTube and wherever you find your podcast. So go listen to that. And like you said, David, I know that Giraffe is actually going to be planning a separate interview with you about Con. So hopefully we'll have that soon because we really want to talk about that as
That'd be
well.
great.
So yeah, like David said, that is currently streaming on your favorite podcast platforms and on the Star Trek YouTube channel. So go check that out. David, thank you so much for joining us again. It was a pleasure, as always, to get to chat with us. And like I just said, don't forget to also tune in to the last 4 weekly reviews that we have coming up of Star Trek. And I'm going to do it Con. And yeah, we will see you later. For MC, for David, I am Julian. Live long and prosper. Majram, good night.
Thanks for beaming into our podcast today. If you want to keep the hailing frequencies open, you can subscribe on Apple and Google Podcasts, YouTube, and Spotify. Like what you hear? Put in a good word with Starfleet and leave us a 5-star review.